Welcome to Viva La Visionary, the podcast that celebrates the innovative ideas and mindsets of entrepreneurs and visionaries. Join your host, Coach Bob Schittefeld, as he dives into inspiring stories and practical insights from trailblazers who are changing the game. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a seasoned leader, this show is your source for motivation and creativity. Let's embark on this exciting journey together.
Hi there, Coach Bob here, founder of the Visionary Forum and host of Viva La Visionary. Excited to have Angie Dianetti here. Angie, how are you today?
I'm awesome.
Of course you are. One of the many things I appreciate about you. We'll talk more about awesomeness with you in a little bit. So as you know, this is for visionaries, about visionaries, from visionaries. It's visionaries unleashing visionaries, as we've talked about, iron sharpening iron. But I like to start with a simple little question, Angie. So why are you on this planet? What are you here to do?
I feel my mission is to elevate others.
Simple. I love it. So you feel that or you know that?
I know that.
I knew that, but yes. Yeah. So, and you already are doing it. So not only have you defined it, and a lot of people overcomplicate it and say, I'm going to take a year to figure it out. Okay, let's know what we're going to. So anyways, I love that. And then, so what do you do? What's your business?
We are performance improvement consultants.
Okay.
So we help business leaders get the most out of their employees at the same time while helping the employees actually love their work.
Nice.
We believe that we spend most of our lives working and nobody starts a job thinking, I'm going to suck at this.
Right.
And nobody hires somebody thinking, you're going to suck at this. But 6 months into it, both people are feeling like, what the heck did I get myself into?
Huh.
And so by evaluating the actual job, most jobs descriptions are actually people descriptions. We focus on what we call a performance profile that actually is better defining the job and start from there to help set expectations, to determine what people need to be able to know, what people have to know and do to be able to produce. But the focus is on my contract with you as employer-employee is you're producing something for me. But we as employers do a really bad job of telling people what that is.
Right. It's tough to not have clear expectations and then yet, like you say, probably both be frustrated.
Exactly.
And what's your target market? Is it for anyone and everyone, or do you have a specific niche that you go after?
So that's always the hard part when what you do can be for anyone and everyone.
Right.
And that's really hard to get the messaging and market to.
Yep.
So we tend to focus on mid-level manufacturers between $10 and $250 million in sales. You have enough employees to be able to actually make the investment worthwhile.
Right. And is this a program that you created, or is it a system that you implement, or is it you make it up each time, or tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So human performance technology as a field and an industry was created late last century and hasn't really been updated since. So our mission has been to modernize it and humanize it and templatize it because it was really designed for the $1 billion and up companies, by the $1 billion and up companies. And so what we've done is we've taken that old intellectual property and we have created a system that we have now proven many times over that works, and it lets us bring it down to a market where this wasn't available before.
Right. I love it. Very cool. So now, is this something that you've always done, that you've loved, and you created a business out of it, or you saw an opportunity and a gap and then created it, or how did that?
So I am, having started this business back in the late 90s, I have been very much about every time there's a change in the marketplace to look at what I call the adjacent possible. Because I can't stand the word pivot. Adjacent possible is just a lot more powerful than pivot.
All right, love it.
So we started out life as a tech writing consulting company. So, and in the late 90s, we were writing help files for .com companies.
Okay. Right.
So, and we all know what happened. The other thing we did a lot back then was wrote documentation, adjusted documentation for Y2K. So when we survived Y2K and the .com bubble burst, that was my first time to have to look for the adjacent possible. It's like, okay, the people who were paying us before are no longer paying us. We have a skill set. Who will pay us something to do that?
Right. Right. Interesting. I love it. So
yeah, it's evolved, and it's evolved many times over the last 30 years. We added, we started doing work in professional services. So we worked for insurance companies and banks, and then we did a lot of manufacturing that got offshored. We added e-learning and training development as a service offering. And so the current iteration is we were working for those $1 billion and up companies, and documentation and training was getting very commoditized by them.
right.
It's a service that can be offshored. It's a service that's not necessarily valued. And I said, I want to do work for people that we can bring them tremendous value for what we can do. And we looked at the umbrella. Why do people write standard operating procedures? Why do people train their people? And it's to improve the performance of their staff,
Right.
and to get better results. Then we started looking at it and found out that only 11% of the time does training actually solve a performance problem, and it's a go-to solution.
Huh.
So we spend in this country billions of dollars developing and creating training, making people go to training, take training, that doesn't solve the problem that it was intended to solve.
Right.
So we started looking at the performance field and saying, if we look at all these other things that impact a worker's performance, we can solve our clients' problems and in a way that is a lot more cost effective.
Right. That's awesome. Shifting gears a little bit, I love it, and I got to believe a lot of us need what you're doing, so I'm excited to learn more. So I want to ask, what do you feel is the role of the visionary? What is your role as a visionary?
My role right now is mostly being the cheerleader, keeping the enthusiasm and the energy, staying on mission, being a culture czar. It's if I do nothing else but that and introduce what we do to the world, be a mission advocate. Those are my key roles.
I love mission advocate. That's cool. So definitely cheerleading. And then, a lot of what you're describing is the energy, which could be culture. It's the vibe of not only cheerleading, but I think also what I see it shifting as many of us are evolving as visionaries. It's usually, we can do it. Let's go, to also, okay, if it's not working, listening. And so a lot of times we had to be the hero, or we think we had to be the hero. And now again, it's being the mission advocate and your people advocate. So it's not only being the cheerleader to me, and again, I know you're great at this because I have another follow-up question, but it's also listening. And you are one of the greatest listeners that I've ever met, but also asking great questions. So I got to believe that ties into what your business does, but also what your role as a visionary is. Would you care to expand on listening and asking great questions?
Well, yes. I mean, first of all, you've talked a little bit about 10x is greater than 2x. Well, you
Right.
can't 10x if everything's on you.
Right.
And I used to say that my job is kind of to be the fairy godmother.
Hmm.
I don't want to go out and be the hero. I don't want to have to actually do all of that. What I want to do is give you the tools and the support to succeed. And that's part of my personal mission to elevate others. I really feel compelled to take all of my staff and especially my leadership team and elevate them. And
Right.
if I elevate them, I elevate me. And the way to do that is not by telling them what to do, but asking. Now, sometimes, as you know quite well from having experienced it, I ask very probing questions.
Yep.
I ask sometimes leading questions because sometimes I have an idea of where I think the problem is, but instead of me telling them, this is what you should do, I will ask them a question that helps them get there.
So is that come naturally to you? Or is that a learned skill asking? Because I think most of us, at least I can speak for myself, I in the past was asking leading questions because I know where I think we need to go, and I'm going to convince you to go there, and I'm kind of pretending that you're a part of it, but I'm basically selling you on it. So
So, one of the best books I ever read is Question Beyond the Question.
Hmm.
So, even when people ask me questions, the first is listening well enough to know what are they really asking, what are they really trying to get at. And by having read that book and the coaching habit and several others, where I just honed that skill of asking questions. So yeah, it was definitely learned,
Right.
and the be- the best way you learn things is you make a lot of mistakes and you ask really stupid questions sometimes,
Well,
and then you've asked a bad question when you see the person's face fall when you ask it.
right, right. Well, it's interesting because I think a lot of us visionaries think we know what we need to do next. So I need to offer, Angie needs this, so this is what we need to offer. Okay, that's fine, but really before we move forward, is there a why that is needed and wanted? And then usually we're not great at the how, that's where we need the right who's. But I think, so again, to me it's to say, what do we need to do next? Okay, and it's an idea. I used to think I figured out the what, and again, I would do leading questions to get what I wanted, and it may not even be the right thing. And if people don't know the why, and I'm the one coming up with the who, we're screwed.
Right. Right. So the real key then is the listening part. And so, it's if you ask a question and you're not willing to listen to
Right,
the answer, and it can be really uncomfortable, especially when we think we know.
right.
But we learn a lot more when we actually listen.
Oh, that's awesome. I'd like to, I definitely want to have you do a session, and I have two ideas for forum. One is the culture, and then I think the question one could be great because that's a definite, not to lump us all in, but there's a lot of us that could really use help on listening and asking great questions. I love that. Very cool on all that. What's one thing that you've learned in the last 20 years, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, as you've really stepped into the visionary seat, that you've implemented or learned that you could share with us? That to say, boy, when I figured this out, or when I implemented this, or when I let go of that, what's one thing that you have evolved on that you could share that other visionaries might learn from?
Um, hmm. I think the biggest thing is that trusting of people and letting go. And it's one of the hardest things I think any of us as visionaries have to do, because we have to trust people and let them make mistakes. You know, when we all got into our jobs and started these business, we made a ton of mistakes, and there was nobody there to get on us or to beat us down. We beat ourselves down enough for our mistakes. Right?
Right.
And I think it's giving the people that are in our leadership teams, giving them that same grace. Maybe even more of the grace than we gave ourselves, because I think we were probably harder on ourselves.
That's where I was going to go, but go ahead.
You know, but I think in the world there's so much fear of making a mistake and doing something, and we can't grow if we don't make mistakes. If you aren't making mistakes, then you aren't pushing the envelope hard enough.
Right.
You might be in business, but you're not an entrepreneur.
Right. And is mistake the right word? That's where I go. I mean, we have to learn from our failures. At the end of the day, they're usually not even failures. It may not be, if I think I'm going here, it may not have got me there, but maybe it's even a better way to get to wherever I'm going. So let's rename mistakes, but
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of learning from listening to you, and I know the answer, and I solve it, and everything's wonderful. And again, that's great. And I'm not looking for struggle, but it's when we do make those mistakes and fall down. Part of it is commitment and conviction that I'm not giving up, and it is learning from that and not regretting it. That's a huge part of it, or beating ourselves up.
I have found that the universe pushes us to do the things that we're supposed to do, and we know we're supposed to do them.
Right.
But if we avoid doing those things, the universe is going to push you into it, and life will be better after.
Yep. Right.
We avoid conflict, we avoid hardship, but growth is painful.
Right. Well, it's interesting, and even the Visionary Forum has helped me a ton. Again, it's a safe space, visionaries, unleashing visionaries, and so I've been told many times in the last year that stop beating yourself up, and I'm like, well, I don't do that. And then as I learned, that's been part of my humor. I thought it was setting a safe space for people and making fun of myself, and and there is something to that, but I didn't realize how much I throw out these little digs at myself, and it's, verbiage. This is what I teach. Verbiage reflects consciousness. And so if I keep making fun of myself and then I'm upset when other people make fun of me, what is that? So do on to others.
Well, as you have said many times, you teach what you need to learn.
Right. No, exactly. Right. And that's why I call that craft. Yeah. I mean, it's like I'm still learning every day on how to know and act like I matter. And that isn't a selfish thing. It's to spend time on my clarity break. I call that I time, and to do my inner work and to do my meditation and breathing. And that is so not how I was wired and how I've lived the last 40 years of my life. It's been go, go, go. And so, we drivens, as Dr. Doug Brackman says, there's about 8% of us who are driven. And a lot of it's because of imposter syndrome. That's a separate topic, but just me proving myself and wanting to be a big value I can be a bigger value and am a bigger value when I slow down and I listen. And so it's not all up here. It's ultimately listening to what's in here. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. So then what's one issue you're working on now, either in your life or in your business as a visionary?
So I'm at the point of my career where it's trying to decide, the book Strengths to Strengths really hit home for me.
Huh.
And I've gone a lot of that way of guiding people and things like that. But there are times where I'm so glad I'm just a visionary. Because the growing of the business, the nitty-gritty of all the business, and I just want to set a direction, set a path, listen and provide guidance, and that's it. So it's so my big challenge right now is, where is my focus? How do I elevate others differently than I have in the past?
Right.
So I'm looking at different succession planning things and those types of things to look at what my life looks like when I really have let go of the vine, and I just which way do I want that vine to be swinging when I let go of it?
Right. Wow, wrong way. And no, I love that. And letting go of the vine doesn't mean that we have to leave the business. A lot of times people, and I'm not saying that you said that, but a lot of times people are like, well, once I go above the line into the owner's box or sell, and what I've realized when the visionary is happy and doing what we love and we're staying elevated in our lives, that helps the business. I mean, it's emotionally, energetically, and when we're
Right.
present, often, we're drama queens. Everything's great. Oh, we're so screwed. To being a little bit more of the sage and whatnot. And there's incredible value for that. And so to me, and you've heard me say, it's life beyond the vine, living life. And so what is that? Well, so how would you describe living life beyond the vine?
Um, I mean, I have such a rich life and so much. Right now, I'm really looking for the white space. Just um, more downtime, more more time to engage more with forum, engage more with other, because I think I get the most joy right now out of those business owner groups that I'm a part of, so many of them.
Right.
Um, and so to me, it's having more time to be able to do that and be with other visionaries and other business owners and helping elevate people who are earlier on in their business journey.
Right. Well, it's interesting because I love coaching visionaries, but at the end of the day, I feel this is the greatest time ever to be alive. I call it the wisdom age. And it's not only coaching up visionaries, it's us visionaries being the living, walking the talk examples of what seeing a vision, imagining that, and going for it. And again, maybe stumbling and getting back up and learning. And so it's teaching others to do the same. Now, I don't know if we can teach others to be visionary, but we can teach them what is it like to have vision? What is it like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know. Well, if you did know, and I've shared this with
What
you,
would
but
it?
yeah. I mean, my son was like, I don't know what I want to do after high school. I'm like, all right, well, take a deep breath and what would be really cool? And he had a vision. We explored it and it tweaked and tweaked. And it's like, and then he chose this. And to have him learn that, okay, now that I'm in college, how do I want that to look like? And what do I want it to look like? And it may not be exact, but it's just having that vision. And again, then we attract things toward it. So,
And I think as long as you're open to that adjacent possible that I talked about in the
yeah,
beginning of our
right,
conversation, because when you're here, you can't see 3 steps beyond of adjacent possible.
right,
So you always need, and that's one of the things that I always struggle with, being too focused on too blinder kind of vision.
yep.
I like to have my vision a little bit wider so that I can see those adjacent possibles.
Right. No, I love it. And we've talked a lot about David Hawkins' book, Letting Go, and I've read it 4 times or listened to it 4 times, and I think I'm starting to get it, actually. I am starting to get it. But his whole thing is, there's different levels of consciousness and vibrations, and at the bottom, and it's, you've got um, obviously fear and whatnot, but it's a lot of shaming and whatnot. And so, but I didn't realize that pride was a negative emotion. And I'm like, well, isn't it good to be proud? Well, no, but how he talks about it is my idea's got to be right. And I'm going to do it till I'm done when it may not be right or it may shift. So again, I believe our role is to cast a vision, and it might adjust a little bit and, or the adjacent possibilities, which is very cool. Awesome. And then, so I want you to share a little bit. I love that because we talked about the role of visionary is a lot about the culture and the energy. So, what words of wisdom would you share on what you've done in creating your culture and helping that to be a place that attracts great employees and great clients?
So I think obviously, first step is to know what your culture is.
Right.
And, we all do that as part of our, everybody's heard you got to have the mission, the vision, the values, and all of that. But if that's all you ever do with it, you are wasted your time.
Right.
The values need to be living, breathing part of your really, it has to be part of your DNA. And that only happens when you take the time to actually live by them,
Right.
reward people for living by them, um, do the hard things. When I first started the EOS journey back in 2014, and we created our values, one of the first things that came out of it is I had to fire my top 2 clients.
Hmm.
We doubled in sales after doing that
Right.
because they were such a bad values fit. So, it's doing the hard things, not the easy path would be keep taking that money.
Right. Right.
But it was hurting us from where we were going. It was it was, they were asking us to do things that felt icky from an integrity standpoint, and I just said, we're not doing it anymore.
Right.
And that living of the values sends such a strong message to your team that yes, we really mean it. I mean, everybody has worked for companies that have a values poster on the wall.
Right.
If you don't feel it and believe in it and recognize it and know that the top leadership actually does those things too, then it's not only, it's worse than meaningless. It's negative.
Right.
So we have a whole program that we call our Journey to the Land of Awesome. And you travel through your journey through 5 lands, that have each are tied to one of our values.
Right.
And so you do activities and things like that, and you earn prizes, and
Nice.
it's designed to be really hard to get to the Land of Awesome. We also call our 10-year goal, our EOS 10-year goal, we call it the Land of Awesome.
Right.
And we have dug a little deeper and painted a picture of, it's not just the, sell 1 million hamburgers or whatever.
Right.
It is a, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What so it's recognizable and you can feel it more. And again, the Land of Awesome, getting to the Land of Awesome should be hard.
Right. Right. And rewarding. Right.
And rewarding.
Yeah.
It's a worthwhile journey. So I have a map that looks like something from Middle Earth and traveling to.
So it's a graphic. It's a picture of what you show.
It's a picture graphic. Everybody gets a passport. We send because we are a fully remote company.
Right.
So I can't just go hand out coins or things for when I see values. It takes a lot more intentionality, but we mail stickers for their passport, and you need so many stickers to move to the next land, plus some other things that you do. So it's an engaging, and it takes a company that's fully remote and makes it so that we are more. It gives us a culture, and it ties us together of this is who we are.
Right.
So.
And so normally I hear core values is how we hire, fire, reward, recognize, and review employees. So you use that for clients as well, correct?
Absolutely. Because clients and vendors.
Right. Vendors I've heard, yeah, but I haven't often heard it with clients, which I love. Because if this is who we are, why are we servicing people that, now, a lot of times I'll tie that to our target market, which might be psychographic. But no, that's awesome. So you named it. You made a picture out of it, so it's not just you talking or on a piece of paper. So you're hitting different senses. You've got a program around it. It's a big part of the vocabulary. So I love that. I think that's that's a huge tip. I did that with my first business. I didn't have a picture, but our mascot, because we help people to mail into Canada, so we called it with the Bob and Doug McKenzie brothers. We were Great White North mailing services. So we came up with a bear as our logo. And then we called it the Bare Necessities. And that was I think the greatest thing that I've done in my career was to label that And then people literally would call me the bear at times. I didn't necessarily want that, but it was just, this is who we are. And then we
Right.
literally adopted a bear at the zoo. And so a percentage of, all right, was, we put $100 toward every proposal that we did. And I would reach out, like you and I would have a conversation. I think, okay, Angie's going to hire us, and I don't get any response. I would get people to call me and say, "What's this thing about donating to the zoo?" Even if I just do a proposal, I'm like, yeah, this is part of who we are. And again, the polar bear represented the fierceness of us, but also the endangered possibility of us. That
That, yes.
but we were cute and yeah, and tough and loyal, and so to have a mascot was huge. So I love what you're doing with something more than just words. I think that's awesome.
Right.
That's
Now,
awesome.
I also double down on everything in our VTO. Is once a week I send just a paragraph to the whole company that digs deeper into the values,
Right.
or the mission, or could be a piece of the land of awesome. It could be just a part of our target market, whatever. They get a paragraph once a week that keeps everybody focused on that VTO.
Right. That's awesome. Cool. Well, I've got two more things before we wrap. One is we've been talking about you and us as visionaries in our business. How does being a visionary in your life, what have you learned recently that is an opportunity to double down on who we are as visionaries, and or some struggles? Because I know that it's not just about the seat that we're talking about, it's about the person. So any other insights or things that you've worked on as being a visionary in life?
Well, I think, as a grandparent now, this is becoming much more realistic it's one thing when you're doing it with your kids and you see your kids grow up and become adults and be active members of society, and you pat yourself on the back. But the beauty about being a grandparent is you get to do it. You get a redo. You, you get a redo with a lot more perspective.
Right.
And to me, it's helping them elevate and get those experiences that their parents can't give them.
I love it. And because we don't have, and I'm not a grandparent yet, but I got to believe like as a coach, I can help people to be their mirror because I'm also not as emotionally attached. So when it's my own kids, I'm not even going to listen to what you say. But if you're a grandparent, I know my parents were great at that I'd be freaking out if my daughter was crying in a restaurant. They're like, a baby's going to cry, especially if you're taking them out of their normal routine. And it's okay. If it's too obnoxious, you take them outside, but it doesn't mean you're a bad parent.
Yeah, I think you could take some of those lessons back to, again, it's like the grace you give other people. We
Right.
give more grace to grandchildren than we did to our own children.
Right. Huh.
We give more grace, and can I take that idea of giving grace to employees?
Right. I love it.
And being that mirror and helping them to grow and elevate. That it's harder when you're the parent or in the weeds of the business and somebody misses a deadline.
Right. Right. So that's a great aha. I appreciate that. That a lot of times people are like, well, as soon as I get to a certain point, then I'm going to show up as who I am. Or as soon as I sell the business, it's like, why not be who I am now and be that teacher and that guide? But it's interesting because a lot of times people say, well, people put me in a box. Well, who usually puts us in a box? Ourselves. We talked about this in the forum that, people are like, I like myself more than when I'm around all of you than I do at home or work. And it's like, and I can relate to that because we don't have judgments with each other and we can be ourselves. We can be ourselves regardless, but it's just interesting. It's not always easy when we've been doing it a certain way with certain people for so long.
There was an old song, and probably, they always hurt the ones you love.
Right. Right. Interesting. So that's interesting. Yeah. So to let go of the vine, and a lot of times people are like, yeah, I'm going to just not check in for a month. And that's not what let go of the vine is. It's to let go of the day to day and things that I can delegate to someone who's better at it and they enjoy it. But to still be engaged, especially if it's with I call my great gift, things that I love and I'm great at. And people are like, well, I don't want to bother you, or we need to protect Bob. It's like, no, you don't have to protect me from things that I'm good at and love. And so it's interesting. And that to me is the same thing in life. A lot of us are really good, especially high quick starts through Colby, which I highly recommend people take as a data point to know thyself. But I can start stuff really quick, really well, and I can finish really well. In between, I'm not good at all. So a lot of times my wife will be like, come up with an idea for a trip. And I'm like, I don't want to figure it all out. But it's like, no, just start coming up with fun ideas. She's great at taking that. And then I come back in to kind of help make a decision. Not that I make the decision, but to say, what else do we need to know? So again, to know who I am, to know who my wife is. And then the same thing with our leadership team and our employees. And it's like, why not shift? I mean, it just doesn't have to be that hard. And I think my number one thing, keep it fun.
Well, and I think recognize that things change. Who you are changes, and it should change. You're growing. You're experiencing different things, and it's okay to change. And sometimes I look at, I have accomplished everything I set out to accomplish in this business when I started it.
Right.
And that can be a scary thing because it's like, okay, new purpose. And I think that's part of looking for those adjacent possibles.
Right.
And when I started the business, it was about having a respectful place for tech writers to work because it was a very disrespected field.
Huh. Interesting.
And so now I have elevated with the performance improvement that I want to elevate the workforce for everybody.
Right. That's awesome. Good for you. All right. My final question, as you know, our rally cry in the last year has become Viva La Visionary. So what does Viva La Visionary mean to you?
Celebrate who we are.
Love it. Well, it's interesting. I love the line. It's we are the cause of and solution to all of life's problems, and that's a big thing. But it is interesting that we visionaries have the courage often to start something. We go do it. We see a problem. We might have a solution. We sell it, and then now we've got to deliver it, and then we hit the ceiling of complexity. So we need structure and processes. Otherwise, we're going to go crazy. But then often, a lot of times, it's so much structure and policy that we get shoved aside. And again, not playing the victim, but whether someone says, get out of the way, Bob, or there goes Bob again, or me just stepping aside, it's an and. If we didn't have the structure, we wouldn't grow. If we didn't have the magic and the creativity of a visionary, we're not going to grow. So to me, it's the and. But right, it is about, we aren't the problem. Now, sometimes we are, but not always.
But part of, again, growth comes from solving problems.
Right.
And identifying, part of what our magic is identifying the problems. So we don't necessarily create the problems. We've identified a problem that exists.
Right.
And brought it to light. And as a former engineer and integrator type, I believe everybody has a little bit of visionary in them. Yep. It took me a lot longer to get there because I never saw that part. The danger is once you start exercising that muscle, then all those things I used to be good at, like those details and the making things happen and all of that, right. I can still do it, but they're more energy draining to me now than they used to be.
Right. No, I get it.
Yeah, it used to be, that's where I got my energy.
Right. No, that's interesting. And then also, like I mentioned, kind of teaching what is vision to our leaders and our employees, even for a project or a goal or a rock. It's like, how do you vision it? What does that look like at the end? Oh, I don't know. We just got to solve this problem. No, take a second to imagine that. And then what do we have to do to get there, obviously? And again, if we make a mistake, so we made a mistake and we keep learning. I love that. All right. Well, anything else you want to add to share for visionaries? This has been awesome.
No, this is great. Love it.
No, this was fun. And I appreciate your friendship. And even through creating to me, community is the next evolution of society. And that means that we can trust each other. We're not judging each other. We're helping each other. Like Ben Franklin had Junto groups, and they would meet, and again, their thing was, how do we, have a land of awesome, but of America. And now it's, how do we have a society that is amazing that we leave for our kids? And a lot of that is through communities. And that's, I've got several, as we all do. I've got my family, my neighbors, my business, other visionaries, and I'm learning how to have community. And we're teaching people how to have community. Be open and honest, support each other, love each other, don't shoot each other down. I mean, so to me, it's an awesome thing. So I appreciate all you've done for me and for the forum and the world. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, Angie, have a great day. Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Hi there, Coach Bob here, founder of the Visionary Forum and host of Viva La Visionary. Excited to have Angie Dianetti here. Angie, how are you today?
I'm awesome.
Of course you are. One of the many things I appreciate about you. We'll talk more about awesomeness with you in a little bit. So as you know, this is for visionaries, about visionaries, from visionaries. It's visionaries unleashing visionaries, as we've talked about, iron sharpening iron. But I like to start with a simple little question, Angie. So why are you on this planet? What are you here to do?
I feel my mission is to elevate others.
Simple. I love it. So you feel that or you know that?
I know that.
I knew that, but yes. Yeah. So, and you already are doing it. So not only have you defined it, and a lot of people overcomplicate it and say, I'm going to take a year to figure it out. Okay, let's know what we're going to. So anyways, I love that. And then, so what do you do? What's your business?
We are performance improvement consultants.
Okay.
So we help business leaders get the most out of their employees at the same time while helping the employees actually love their work.
Nice.
We believe that we spend most of our lives working and nobody starts a job thinking, I'm going to suck at this.
Right.
And nobody hires somebody thinking, you're going to suck at this. But 6 months into it, both people are feeling like, what the heck did I get myself into?
Huh.
And so by evaluating the actual job, most jobs descriptions are actually people descriptions. We focus on what we call a performance profile that actually is better defining the job and start from there to help set expectations, to determine what people need to be able to know, what people have to know and do to be able to produce. But the focus is on my contract with you as employer-employee is you're producing something for me. But we as employers do a really bad job of telling people what that is.
Right. It's tough to not have clear expectations and then yet, like you say, probably both be frustrated.
Exactly.
And what's your target market? Is it for anyone and everyone, or do you have a specific niche that you go after?
So that's always the hard part when what you do can be for anyone and everyone.
Right.
And that's really hard to get the messaging and market to.
Yep.
So we tend to focus on mid-level manufacturers between $10 and $250 million in sales. You have enough employees to be able to actually make the investment worthwhile.
Right. And is this a program that you created, or is it a system that you implement, or is it you make it up each time? Or tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. So human performance technology as a field and an industry was created late last century and hasn't really been updated since. So our mission has been to modernize it and humanize it and templatize it, because it was really designed for the $1 billion and up companies, by the $1 billion and up companies. And so what we've done is we've taken that old intellectual property and we have created a system that we have now proven many times over that works, and it lets us bring it down to a market where this wasn't available before.
Right. I love it. Very cool. So now, is this something that you've always done, that you've loved, and you created a business out of it, or you saw an opportunity and a gap and then created it, or how did that?
So I am, having started this business back in the late 90s, I have been very much about, every time there's a change in the marketplace, to look at what I call the adjacent possible. Because I can't stand the word pivot. Adjacent possible is just a lot more powerful than pivot.
Right. Love it.
So we started out life as a tech writing consulting company. So, and in the late 90s, we were writing help files for .com companies.
Okay. Right.
So, and we all know what happened. The other thing we did a lot back then was wrote documentation, adjusted documentation for Y2K. So when we survived Y2K and the .com bubble burst, that was my first time to have to look for the adjacent possible. It's like, okay, the people who were paying us before are no longer paying us. We have a skill set. Who will pay us something to do that?
Right. Right. Interesting. I love it. So it's evolved.
Yeah, it's evolved, and it's evolved many times over the last 30 years. We added, we started doing work in professional services. So we worked for insurance companies and banks, and then we did a lot of manufacturing that got offshored. We added e-learning and training development as a service offering. And so the current iteration is, we were working for those $1 billion.
Thank you for tuning in to Viva La Visionary. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and found inspiration in our guest stories. If you loved what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and share the podcast with fellow dreamers and doers. Join us next time as we continue to explore the limitless possibilities of visionary thinking. Until then, keep dreaming big and taking action. Your vision matters.